Hey everybody, welcome to another Blender tutorial. Today we're going to be working in Blender 2.9 again. I've been messing around with it a little bit more. I've been having quite a bit of fun. And today we're going to look at how we can make a liquid simulation where the liquid flows through a pipe. So if you like the video, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe. Also have a look at the timestamps below if you're looking for something specific. They have been added to my videos now, and they'll be in all of my videos in the future. Alright, so let's get started. So the first thing you need to do is open Blender 2.9 and create a general folder. We're going to be greeted with this little cube, but before we do anything there, we're going to go over to our file, and we're going to say external data and automatically pack into .blend. Then we're going to go and we're going to immediately save our file. So go back to file and save as. Then you'll be greeted with this little window over here. So then you can just navigate to where you want to store your blending files, Blender files. I call it blending. So mine is in my local disk, and I'm going to go to blending. We're going to create a new little folder, and I'm just going to call it Liquid Eevee. Yeah, so we're going to be working in Eevee with this one. We can just double click on that and save as. All right, so the first thing we want to do is create our pipes. Super simple how to do it. We're not going to go into fancy pipes or anything right now. I'm just going to give you the basic principle of how to do it so that you can create your own pipe systems and stuff like that in the future. So the first thing I'm going to do is delete this little cube and Shift A. And so I'm going to put a little plane down over here. Then I'm going to go into edit mode by pressing tab. And all I want to do is select two of these vertices, or three of these vertices, and then delete them. So just hit delete or X and then select vertices. Then we're left with this one lonely vertex, and this is going to be our pipe. So I want to just snap it to the center of my world. To do that, I'm going to press Shift and S. Shift and S, just hold it in, and then there's the option over here, number 7, for selection to cursor, and that's the one I'm going to choose. Then it'll just take me to the center of my world. What I want to do now is move that little vertex up. So to do that, I'm just going to hit G and then Z, and I'll be able to move it up like a little bit, and that's perfect. So to create our pipes, we're just going to use, or to get the form of our pipe, we're going to use the extrude tool. So to do that, with your vertices selected, hit E and Z, and that'll allow you to take it straight down. I'm happy with that. And then I'm going to do it again, except this time I'm going to go E and Y and take it out. So there we've got like a nice little L form, but it is too sharp, so it'll not work for a pipe. I might actually even just move this out a little bit more, and even this top one, just move it up a little bit more. All right, and then I'm going to select this vertex over here, and then I'm going to press Control, Shift, and B all at once. And while I'm holding it, I'm just going to move my mouse out, just to get like a more or less where my bend is going to be, and then I'm going to scroll up. So you'll see if you hit your scroll wheel or roll your scroll wheel, whoopsie, you will get the effect you want. So this is not the effect that I want, so I'm just going to right click and make sure it doesn't happen again. So Control Shift B, pull it out, roll the mouse, and that's pretty much what I want there, a decent little bend. So I like to have a lot of vertices, so you can see the more you scroll, the more vertices you get, and it just creates a nice smoother bend in the pipe. Alright, so now that that's done, we can hit tab again and go out of edit mode. So we won't be working with edit mode again. Then you might be wondering, but how are we going to make it a tube? So this is a relatively easy part. The first thing we want to do with it selected is go over to Object, and we're going to go Convert to Curve from Mesh. Then we're going to put down a new mesh. So we're going to say Shift A again. We're going to go to Mesh, and we're going to choose a circle. And if you want a higher quality, like a smoother pipe, go over to here where it says Add Circle, and you can add vertices. So I'm just going to add like 100 vertices, and that'll be fine for me. You'll see that disappears as soon as you click away. Then I also want to convert this into a curve. So once again, with it selected, click Object, Convert to Curve from Mesh, and this is gonna allow us to turn this into a pipe. So now select your pipe shape or your bend shape, and in the Properties tab over here, we're gonna come over to Object Data Properties. We're going to look for Geometry. You're going to look for Bevel, and under the Bevel option we want to select Object, and then you're just going to select your circle, and voila, we have our pipe. So if you want to change the size of your pipe, you change the size of the circle. So you can just hit S and you can size it up or down as much as you want, and I'm happy with this. And you can see that we got a relatively smoother pipe because we went for 100 vertices. Once you're happy, you need to click on the pipe, go to Object, and this time we're going to convert to Mesh from Curve. So now if you try and resize it by clicking on the circle, it ain't going to do anything. So you can delete the circle. And there you have a pipe. We're not finished with it yet. Once we've done the water simulation, we're just going to touch up the pipe and make it a bit thicker. I like to do it after the simulation has been done, otherwise it just doesn't look like a pipe. Alright, so that is the pipe sorted. Now we need to get it ready for our liquid simulation. So we're going to click on the pipe again. Then we're going to go over to the Properties tab, up until where it says Physics Properties. Click on that, go to Fluid, Type, Effector. Now very important is to click the option is planar or planar. I don't really know how you pronounce that, but this one. We're going to make sure that that is ticked. Absolutely important. Now that we've done that, as soon as you do any big changes, go and save your project. Super important. Save your project. So now that's done. Now let's do our simulation. So for this, I'm going to be using a UV sphere for our water source. So we're going to go to Shift A, Mesh, and UV sphere. And then I want to move it to the top because I want the water to flow down into the pipe like that and then pop out over here. So I don't really care about its settings like we did with the water. So I'm just going to size that down, and then we can just move it up here. And you just want to make sure that it fits in the pipe nicely, kind of like that. And you can bring it to the top if you want, because if it is like on the wall or a little bit out, your water is going to be all over the place, especially if you change the initial velocity. So you don't want that. With the UV sphere selected, we're now going to go to Object. We're going to go over to Quick Effects and hit Quick Liquid, and it'll do the work for us. All right, so there we have our domain, we have our water source, but if I play that, it's going to drop right through, which is very sad and depressing, but do not fret because we just need to bake in the data. So it's not a problem. But before we do that, we're just going to change the shape of this domain so that the entire simulation is in the domain. As you can see, our water pipe is sticking out of our domain. So to do that nice and easy, I'm just going to hit Shift Space and S to scale it up, or you can just go to your toolbar over here and choose the scale tool. And then I'm just going to scale it a little bit like this, a little bit like this, and then just move the domain a little bit, so it's like that. And what we're going to have is our water is going to kind of like spout out like that, like that. It'll look nice if it works. So let's hope it works the first first round over here. Okay, so now comes the super duper important part of any liquid simulation. That's setting up your cache file. So you're going to click on your domain. Make sure you're still in the physics properties, and then scroll all the way down where it says cache. So this step is very important in Blender 2.9, also in Blender 2.8, but there's an added step which I'll discuss now. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that our cache has been saved in the same folder as where we saved our project. So we're just going to click on this little folder over here. And there I can see where it's been saved. So it's blending liquid Eevee. So this is in the correct place. I'm just going to hit accept on that, and it's fine. The next thing you want to do, very important, is make sure is resumable is ticked. So this so far I have seen kind of helps prevent your simulation from breaking and having your particles disappear. And then not be able to get it back. So with the bit of work that I have been doing with Blender, I have noticed that the cache files are pretty sensitive. If you mess around with them too much, they can break permanently, and you have to start from scratch, which really sucks. So is resumable, very important. As soon as you've done this, go save your project. If you're really worried about your simulation breaking, prevention is better than cure. So I will discuss that as soon as we've set up and the simulation is running like we want it to. Okay, so now that that's done, I'm just going to go to frame start and end. So this will say or tell your information where to start baking your simulation, when to end baking your simulation. So I'm going to make it 150 frames. At 29 frames per second, you can kind of do the math at how long your simulation is going to be at 150 frames. Once that's done, you can come over here to your progress bar and also just set it to 150. So that's where your animation will play up to. All right, that's done. And once again, go and save your file. Do not forget to save. So what I've noticed with simulations in Blender 2.9, they can be a little bit slower, and the quality of a 32 resolution is not great. So I pump it up to at least 64. It gives you a decent amount of fluid particles. Then the time scale. So mess around with the time scale, because this is very dependent if you're working with an experimental build, or if you're working with 2.8. If you're coming from 2.8 to 2.9, you'll see that the time scale is a little bit different again. So I put it at about 1.4. Gives me a nice fast fluid, but you can play with it once we've baked it in. So then go all the way back down to where the cache is, and let's say modular, and then we're going to bake the information. And if it has been set up correctly, sometimes something does go wrong and you might have to start over again. But that's also why we kind of saved through the whole process. So you can see it's busy baking here at the bottom. We're just going to leave that to bake. Because we said resumable, we can pause the baking by hitting escape, and then you can just resume it. Over here you'll see there's a resume option. So let's have a look at what is happening. All right, so there we have our particles. So if we drop that, we can see it drops quite nicely. We can barely see anything though. That's because we've still got our liquid sources geometry. So to change that, we're going to click on our sphere, and over here you can see we're still in our physics properties. We just want to change that geometry to inflow, select our domain, free that data, and then bake the data again. And then once this is done, so we can see that the interaction worked quite nicely. So the geometry option, if you're new to Blender, is it just takes the form of like your UV sphere, takes that form, makes some water out of it and just drops it. But we want an actual flow of water, and that's what we're doing right now. So you can see the baking takes a little bit slower with the inflow. So, and there's done there, and there you go. So there our beautiful simulation is working. So you can take it back to our 0 frame, press play, and there you go. So that's quite nice. You'll see it's not too fast, it's not too slow, and I'm pretty happy with that. All right, so then we're talking about doing prevention is better than cure. So to do that, to kind of prevent it from breaking down, you can go straight to the file or folder where your simulation data is kept. So I'm just going to hit save here quickly. So to do that, you can just, I'm just going to go straight here into my files, and then we can go into my C drive, because that's where I keep my blending stuff. And then we have the Liquid Eevee, which is the one we're working with. And then you can just duplicate this and maybe name it backup. So there we've got a copy, or you can just leave it like that. It says copy. So now if you break your simulation, all you need to do is come to your cache and change the cache origin. So if I go back over here to our blending folder, you can just click on there and then it'll use that correct cache again, the one that's not broken. So nice and easy. Prevention better than cure, guys. I have not practiced this today, so this is actually the first or second time that I've done it. I did a geometry one the other day just for fun in 2.9. So it's really great that this has worked and that it has not broken. So it seems 2.9 is a little bit more stable than 2.8. Okay. Prevention, better than cure, done. Just gonna hit save just in case. Now we can get started with our Eevee Liquid. So this is not like the one that I did in 2.8. This is an Eevee, a lot less heavy on the computer. So now we're gonna go, make sure your domain is selected, scroll down to where we see mesh, tick that and hit bake. And this will take a little bit longer to bake than the particles did. So I hope so far you've been able to keep up. While we're waiting for this to bake, I'm just going to ask you to please support me. If you like this video, hit like. If you like my videos, hit subscribe. That'll help me and support me so that I can continue making these videos for you guys. Also, if you have a project suggestion, just leave a comment below like everyone has been doing. So let's let that bake and we'll come back to it when it's done. Okay, so it is done baking and it's looking pretty good. So now you can get more or less of an idea of what your simulation is going to look like. So we can just go back to our start frame, hit play, and then you can see it's got a nice flow. It's a little bit slow, but I'm pretty happy with that. I really don't care. That's looking good. Obviously, if it's playing through at 29 frames per second, it's going to be a lot faster. So just keep in mind that this is not like an absolute accurate depiction of your simulation. All right, so let's pause it right there. Now we can go to rendered view and we're gonna make our Eevee Liquid. So once again, let's just save for good measure. Now the problem is you can't really see what's going on here in this rendered view, and that's because the setup is kind of built for cycles. So if we had to change our render engine into cycles, we'd actually see the liquid a lot better. So another important thing to note is you're probably not going to get it looking as realistic as this in cycles. in Eevee I mean. So let's just change that back to Eevee, and we can get started by how to make it look like liquid that we can actually see. So the first thing that I like to do is go over to this light over here and change its settings and turn it into the sun. So I've selected the light. I'm going to come over here to properties by object data, and I'm going to say sun. Now the initial 1000 watt strength is a bit rough, so you can actually bring it right down to something like 10, and you can see it's pretty strong still. So just play around with that until you're satisfied with it, and you can see it's not overexposing our white tube over here. So let's click on our water, and we're going to go into our shader editor. So to do that, we're just going to come up to the left top side of our screen and drag it down when it makes that crosshair, just like that, and then we can just position this. Then we're going to come over here to this little icon. It says editor type. Click on that, and we're going to go over to our shader editor. And this is where we're going to make our water look like actual liquid. So we're going to delete these two nodes, and then we're going to say Shift A, shader, and we're going to go just put our principal shader over here and connect it. And there we can actually see our liquid. Now the cool thing about Eevee is because it's not so graphics intensive, like you can just hit play and you can see how your liquid's going to react, which I really like about Eevee. It's the one thing that I like about Eevee. Personally, I prefer cycles just for better realism. So let's just get our water out there so we can see it again. Alrighty, and that's fine. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is a super important step. It'll save you a lot of frustration, so please remember to do this. Is come over to options, and here where the blend mode is, say alpha blend. So we can see the actual particles now, but you'll understand why I did that, and I'll actually show you the difference. So we're going to say, first of all, let's choose a color for our water. I'm not going for realism with this one, but if you do, you can just mess around with the color and stuff yourself. And there you go, that's very nice. But we are going to make it look decent. So the next thing we want to do is Shift A and add another shader. We're going to go for a mix shader and just slap it in there. And then we're going to add another shader. And this time we're going to take the transparent shader and just stick it there and connect it. Alright, so this will make your water transparent like actual water, and you can really decide how much transparency you want. So that's kind of like enough for me, almost maybe too much, maybe something like there. You can just barely see through it, and to me that's fine. So once again, it's all about your personal preference. And then we're going to put in another mix shader. So Shift A, shader, mix shader, put her in there. And this time I'm going to add a gloss. So let's go to shader and our glossy shader, connect it up there. And there you can see it's very glossy. So I'm going to change the type of glass by clicking over here and just saying sharp. Maybe I should just zoom in so you can see a bit better. And there you can see the difference. So if we put it back to the GGX, it looks like that. And then we put on sharp, it looks more like an actual liquid. So this is kind of how you accomplish a type of realism with Eevee. So that's quite nice. And that's it. But now I want to just show you why we use the alpha blend in the options. So if we take it back to opaque, that's what you're going to get over there. So it kind of looks the same, I guess. But if we put it over to alpha blend, the transparent works a lot better and the reflections look a bit better. And that is pretty much it. So if we play that now, we can see we've got some nice reflections happening over there, and I'm quite happy with that. So yeah, so we can just get our liquid out again. Alright, so the next step is to place your camera. I kind of like this angle that we've got going here. So just to get it more accurate, we just want to kind of close that over there just in case you want to make some last minute changes. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and then Control Alt 0, and I can see I need to zoom out a little bit. Control Alt 0 again. Maybe move a little bit over to the right over here, and Control 0 again. All right, now I'm happy with that, and you can just play and make sure you've got a decent angle. To get your reflections a little bit better, you can just change the angle of your sun. So click on your light, and you can just mess around with that until you are satisfied. And you can just hit play to see how all of your reflections are going to be showing. And that looks kind of nice. We've got some reflections, I guess. So just mess around with that. Even if you want nicer shadows, there you go, that's nice. So there we've got a decent amount of reflection. There you go. Alright, so that just helps us to see the actual water look nicely. Alrighty, and now we save, obviously. Now we can just click on our pipe. So now I'm going to show you how to make your pipe thicker. So let's just zoom in there so you can see the effect. So this is actually pretty easy, and this is where Blender's modifiers come from. And the reason why I waited until the simulation was done is because you can see there's kind of that little gap there, like naturally, if you don't mess around with the settings, and that is fine. So with that, we're going to go over here to our modifiers, add modifier, and then we're going to look for our Solidify modifier under generate. And then by thickness, you can mess around with the thickness a little bit to get an accurate depiction of a pipe. And that's pretty nice. So the last thing that you can do also is just click on that UV sphere. Where are you? Alright, that UV sphere, and delete it. And then we can just go back to our camera view, and now you can just do a test render. So to do that is just F9, F12. I'm so sorry. Can see I haven't been sleeping, and there you've got a basic idea of what your simulation is going to look like. Nicely done in Eevee. But I can see the top over there. So that's going to take some camera repositioning. So we don't want to see that. So what we can do is just move our camera a little bit and just make sure that we kind of cut that out. There you go. And then we can just move down a little bit more. And that's pretty good. Alright, so now we can just hit that test render again, F12. And there you go. So that is it. That is your liquid simulation through a pipe in Eevee. The cool thing about Eevee is even in its render, it is not so intensive on your computer. So for this one, I'm going to go to my render settings, and with the final render, I'm just going to go to output. I'm going to go to file format, and you can just choose whichever one of these formats you like. So I'm just going to say FFmpeg, and we've got 150, got RGB selected, and now we can hit Control F12, and we can start letting our simulation render into a video. So let's let that render. You can see it's going really quick, so much faster than in cycles. We're already at frame 8. This is a live speed of rendering with Eevee, and that's the great thing about Eevee. That's like the one good thing about Eevee, which I like. So let's let that render, and when it's done, we can have a look at how it comes out. With this video, because we're rendering it into video, we're not going to do sequencing. So let's check back in once it's done. And there it's pretty much done. So if everything was done correctly, then it should look something like this. And it looks pretty nice. We've got a little bit of transparency, not too much. And we've got some nice glinting on the water from our sun. And it looks pretty good. So well done for creating your first Blender 2.9 Eevee simulation that interacts with a pipe. So thank you for watching. If you liked it, please hit the like button. If you really liked it, please hit the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss out on any of my other videos. And thanks everybody for watching. Have a great day.